It's time for ROTD Weekend. I am recording this on Wednesday morning, and as you can imagine, I'm not feeling great, but, well, we have to do things. I am going to remind you to hug your children and your loved ones and, distract yourself. I'm planning to make a big batch of egg noodles this afternoon when I'm done recording this. Just sort of immerse myself in something mindless that takes a little while, and then my freezer will have lots of noodles in it because I think I've told you before, I've learned that drying them is not really the best strategy. If they're not fully dry, they can go moldy. So freezing them is a better option. So I'm going to make a big batch of egg noodles and freeze them and just find other ways to stay productive and keep my mind off of things. And I guess in that theme, my guest today is kind of an expert on productivity. I am speaking with Raquel Pineira, who is the blogger at organizedisland.com, and she has a background as a productivity specialist. So Raquel and I are talking about using her special background and skills to be more productive in the home. And that is what I need to hear right now, and maybe you do too. So let's listen to my conversation with Raquel Pineira from organizedisland.com. Raquel Pineira, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's good to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Now, you are a fellow food blogger, but your blog is a little bit different from other people's food blogs. Can you tell me how?
Sure. So my blog is called Organized Island, and that is based on the fact that I used to be a productivity manager when I worked full time. Because of that, all of my recipes on the blog include time-saving tips and shortcuts so that you can save time when preparing meals and desserts and things.
So you've taken your productivity skill set and you've put it into all of your recipes.
Exactly. That's what I've tried to do because I realize when people just want to be able to spend time with others and enjoy certain moments in life. And although it can certainly be cooking, it's also nice to just streamline when you can.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. So can you give me an example of a time-saving tip that you love for one of your recipes?
Absolutely. So one of the things I really love to do is when I come back from the market with some of my vegetables, like my onions and my celery, things like that, I like to go ahead and prepare them, chop them up, and keep them in the refrigerator for the week. So they're all ready when I'm ready to make a meal. So it's kind of a form of meal prep, but it's not super time consuming.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you have to store them in any special way so they don't dry out or anything like that?
So it depends. When I'm doing onions and celery, I just put them in sealed containers, clear containers in the refrigerator. It has to be clear because I have to be able to see what everything is. But if I'm going to do it for a longer period of time, it might take more preparation.
That makes sense. So you're sort of doing a little bit of mise en place as you're doing this. But this is one of those oft debated questions. As a home cook, do you find it makes sense to, when you're about to make a recipe, prep all the ingredients, or do you prep as you go?
Typically, I prep as I go, to be honest with you. But yes, it does certainly help save time to prepare in advance. It just kind of depends on the recipe that I'm making and what it is I'm going to prepare. For example, if it has fresh fruit, things like that, I don't prepare ahead of time because I want them to have the most robust, juicy flavor when preparing whatever dish it is.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. And I'm not a mise en place person. I find that, I put a pan on the stove with a bit of oil in it and I can chop the onion while the oil's heating, and then I can chop the pepper while, you know what I mean? And standing there and doing all of that first, except for if you're doing a stir fry or something, where you have to do stuff really quickly. I find it's faster if you are doing it as you go, but maybe stir fries, or if like you're new to cooking, that would be something. So you also do a lot of like meal planning strategies, right?
I do. I do have some meal planning. I do have a book on Amazon, actually. It's called Meal Planning in Minutes. I like the idea of meal planning because, first of all, it saves you money because if you see something on sale at the market, for example, ground beef, I can incorporate that in, several meals, even some that I can prepare ahead. And it also saves time because if you're already prepping some of the dishes ahead of time, let's say you need cooked chicken breasts, I can double that and keep some in the refrigerator for the second meal, things like that.
So when you're meal planning, you are looking ahead to not only like you have your plan made up in a way that you're making things on one day that you're maybe using on multiple days. So that's part of your meal planning.
That's correct. Yes.
I am terrible at doing that. I will tell you. You know what? I often think that I'm doing that. And then what happens? I mean, of course there's 4 of us in the house, and one is my boyfriend who likes to go for seconds. And then of course I have a 16-year-old boy. And so like, for instance, we did like flank steak burrito bowls the other day, and I made extra flank steak so that we could have burritos a couple days later. I was going to be out, so I was going to make burritos for the kids. What ended up happening was everybody had multiple helpings of the delicious steak for the steak bowls, and then there was none left for the burritos.
My God.
Then I had nothing in the fridge. I had to go back to the grocery store because I had not had. So it doesn't work for me. But
well, that's great. I think you just have to make more and account for those second servings. That's fantastic.
I think it's probably true, but I think they will eat like bottomless pits. I think they will just have more if there's more. But yeah, there's got to be a limit, right?
Right. Well, maybe you could hide it in the fridge and put it in a container without it, that you can't see through.
That
hide it in the back behind the lettuce or something.
That's what, you know what? You're absolutely right. What I need to do is like I cooked 2 flank steaks. I need to wrap one up in like foil plastic and just stick it in the fridge right away. And they never even know it was there.
There you go. There you go.
Because I think it's that big pile of sliced steak, and they're like, "Oh, look at all that steak," and then they want to eat it all. Yeah.
You can't blame them for that.
No, I can't. That's funny. So when it comes to like canned goods, pantry items, do you have any time saving or productivity tips for keeping track of those, storing those, anything like that?
So I do have a pantry log that I do keep because there are some canned goods I use a lot. For example, tomato sauce, canned diced tomatoes, beans, pinto beans, navy beans, those kinds of things. So I do, but I also pretty well stocked with those items because I know I can whip up something pretty quickly with those. So as long as I know that I have them, I don't really have any time-saving tips per se, but I do store them with the oldest item in front and then the newer items in the back. So that way I avoid things expiring before I use them and wasting money.
And you have a log.
I do. I have a little log that I keep on the pantry door. So that way, if I'm out of something, I can check the box. I don't like to run out of things. That just turns my whole world upside down.
But okay, wait. So are you like checking things in and out on your log, like 4 cans of beans in, or just when you notice something's missing, you check it off on the...
Right. Just when I use the last item. If I use the last bit of spaghetti, the last can of tomatoes, I just click it on the little sheet.
Okay. No, that makes more sense. I imagine this like continuous inventory of like, wow, that's impressive.
No, that would definitely not save me time.
You know what though? I was literally just talking to Ashley from Big Flavors from a Tiny Kitchen, and she has a really, really small kitchen. And so she actually does I totally forgot about this as I was asking the question. She totally does do an in and out inventory because they have so little space that they have to know exactly how many things are left and how many things are used. So
that's a great idea for a small space. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that would make total sense.
Yeah, no, totally. But yeah, normally I was just not. Actually, I have a friend who lives on a houseboat for part of the year, and they do something very similar too. They have like cans of food and stuff like packed inside of seats and all kinds of stuff. So there's like a food inventory. So small spaces. But yeah, for normal, most of us do not require that much log.
Thank goodness. But yeah, it totally makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So Raquel, have you brought a surprise recipe for me today?
I have. I've brought a surprise recipe. It's one that I've made so many times.
Ooh.
It's my one pot skillet spaghetti.
Oh, I love it. So everything, the noodles, the sauce, everything is done in one vessel.
Correct. That's correct.
Oh,
Yes,
I
everything is
love
done.
it. So where do you
And
start when you're making this?
I love this recipe because it just takes a few moments of prep time and then you just let it cook for about 20-25 minutes and it's done for you.
So the noodles are like cooking in the sauce essentially. I have to
That's
tell you,
correct.
I have a couple of recipes, not a spaghetti one, but similar ones on my site. And I came across the reason they're there is I came across something like that years ago and I had to try it because I didn't believe it. I was like, no, you can't cook noodles in tomato sauce and they're going to be gummy. That's not going to be good at all. And so I did it I don't know, I was like talking down to this random person on the internet in my head, right? And I had to try it. I had to try it and find out. And it was delicious and it worked so well that I do it all the time now for different things because it is just, super convenient. One pot, you don't have to be boiling water in one and all the timing and everything. So yeah, they turn
Exactly.
out great. I love this. So where do you start with this one?
Okay, so you start with a large skillet. You could also use a big pot or Dutch oven if you wanted to.
Mm-hmm,
And you put it on the stove over medium heat.
mm-hmm,
You will throw in about quarter cup of onions and about more or less a pound of ground beef.
mm-hmm.
And you start browning the ground beef. I don't add oil because oftentimes I use an 80-20 ground beef combination. So there's usually enough fat in the ground beef that I
Mm-hmm.
don't need to add any. So you take the ground beef and onions, and of course the onions will become translucent, and you will brown the ground beef till it's browned on all sides.
Okay.
Then I drain the ground beef and then bring that same pan back to the stove. You add 2 cups of water, one 15-ounce can of tomato sauce,
Mm-hmm.
and then I add a teaspoon or a little plus because I use my hands a lot. I don't always measure exactly, but basil, oregano, and about a teaspoon of salt,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a quarter teaspoon, a couple pinches of pepper. And I put that all on the stove again over medium heat until it just starts to boil. While that's happening, I am taking my about 6 ounces of spaghetti and I am breaking it in half so that it fits into the bowl. I know that's like some people say, oh, that's a no-no to cut the spaghetti in half, but honestly, it cooks better because it fits and it tastes just the same. So it's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you because you're doing that in the skillet. And if it was long, it's not gonna all be submerged, right?
Exactly. And that submerged part is so important.
Well, and
One,
for this kind of recipe, sorry,
Mhm.
I'm interrupting you. For
No,
this kind of recipe, it's crucial. Like normally when you're boiling pasta, you've got a big pot of water. So you've got tons of space for the noodles to submerge in there and do their thing. But here you're
right.
crucially trying to have just the right amount of liquid. The water is going to soak into, 2 cups of water and 1 can of sauce, right? So the water is going to absorb into the noodles. Some of it's going to evaporate away and that becomes your sauce. So you don't want so much that the noodles can swim like they normally would. Otherwise, you will have way too much sauce, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so well put. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel like I'm struggling to explain it, but yes. So you break it in half and then it all fits and then you don't need to add extra liquid and the ratios are going to be just right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So once the just starts to boil, break the spaghetti, you're putting it in the pan. You're kind of pushing it down with a little spoon or a wooden spoon or something similar so that they are all submerged. And then you cover the pot and then you turn it down to simmer and you just let it simmer for about 20 minutes or so.
Okay.
You want to check it at that time. And the spaghetti should be just about done. You want to cook it obviously till it's al dente.
Mm-hmm.
Then I add a little bit of parsley for color on the top.
Mm-hmm.
And you can throw on some grated Parmesan cheese. You can
Mm-hmm.
throw on some red pepper flakes, whatever you want. And boom, dinner is done. Open a bag of salad and there's your dinner.
I love it. Oh, and no cleanup. Like really, you have the one skillet.
Exactly.
And if it was like a non-stick skillet, then it just wipes like nothing and you're moving on to putting your feet up and watching TV.
Exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Actually, non-stick skillet is definitely one of my time savers. I use them a lot because they just do make cleanup easier.
They make cleanup easier for sure. And And I mean, this is one of those things like I'm, slowly teaching my kids to cook. And when I'm interacting with people who are learning to cook, the nonstick skillet, like when you're worried about, some stuff sticking to the pan, that's a panic moment when you're first cooking. You've got some chicken in there and you're trying to lift it. And we know, experienced cooks know, if you're using like a heavy bottom metal pan or something, you leave it for longer and it will eventually come up. But
Right.
they're trying to look underneath. Is it brown yet? They're doing all this stuff. And if it's all sticking, then they're stressing out and it's not fun. And so you have a non-stick skillet and you're just not worrying about it. So they might not have their chicken as brown as we would. It'll be cooked. It won't be stuck. They won't be stressed out scrubbing later too, and therefore never wanting to do it ever again.
Exactly. That's so true.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. And yeah, cleanup. Everything is about cleanup. Well, this is fantastic. I will put the link to this recipe in the show notes for people who are listening so they can go and find it. Raquel, can you let people know where they can find you online if they want more of your time-saving tip recipes?
Sure. My blog again is Organized Island, all one word. So I'm at Organized Island on most of the social media handles. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on TikTok, although I'm just starting to kind of really get going on that. And Facebook. Also, I have a Facebook page.
No, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Raquel. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, Christina. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, if you have not tried a one-pot pasta dish before where the noodles are cooking right in the sauce, now you need to. As I said, as I've told you before, I tried this for the first time because I didn't think it would work, and it worked so well that I have done it so many times since then. So definitely try Raquel's recipe, and yeah, it might just change the way you make spaghetti on a night when you want to save time. Now, what am I doing this week work-wise? As I said, I'm going to make some egg noodles, but that's not for work. That is for my own mental health and sanity. For work-related cooking, I am also maybe spoiling myself in ways that I don't usually do. I know I talk about not having a sweet tooth, but there are things that I really do like. And one of them is custard. Like, you get like the custard or pastry cream inside of eclairs. I don't necessarily like the whole eclair. It's like a little bit too much for me, but I love the filling. And what happened, this is kind of a long story. I'll try to make it a little shorter here, but I was searching for something online and I came across a description of a French hot chocolate from a supposedly famous cafe or bakery in Paris where they use real chocolate and it's very thick. And then they add pastry cream or custard to the hot chocolate. And I was just like blown away. And I'm like, oh my God, I have to make this French hot chocolate. And then I started actually searching for recipes for it and couldn't find one that actually has custard. Not even on the site that was talking about it. They then have recipes that they claim are for the French hot chocolate, but they don't have custard in them either. So it became a mission of mine to figure out how to do this. And I've been playing around a little bit. And this week is the week that I'm actually going to make the custard, make that French style hot chocolate with real chocolate, nice and thick, and then combine the two and see what happens. So I am very excited about that. And I will be having some rich, deep, dark hot chocolate and some custard. And maybe that indulgence is just what I need. Now, as to what is going live on the sites this week, there is squash going on both sites. There is acorn squash on the Cookful, and we have butternut squash on Cook the Story. Both of them are done in the air fryer, and both of them have you put the seeds in with the squash for part of its cooking time to toast up, and you can have them on their own. They're as delicious as pumpkin seeds, both the seeds from the butternut squash and from the acorn squash, although I will say I like the acorn squash seeds the best. They're just as good as pumpkin seeds, and they're totally safe to eat. They're delicious, and they will cook in the air fryer wonderfully. And I guess what I like about these recipes is when you're doing a whole butternut squash or acorn squash, cut them in half, you don't get very many seeds from them. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense to like get out a pan, preheat the oven, all of that. But if you're cooking the squash in the air fryer anyhow, then doing the seeds in there, even that small amount at the same time, is just perfect, not difficult at all, and you've got to try it. So those are going live on the sites this week. And what am I telling you about on this podcast this week? We are talking about glazing ham. We have those mac and cheese cups I was telling you about, the ones that you use up leftover cooked pasta for. Oh, I am telling you about the air fryer butternut squash halves with the seeds, and there's some gravy. There's a beautiful pineapple glaze for ham. So much great stuff as we head closer to Thanksgiving. If you are not already, make sure you are subscribed to the show so that you do not miss any of these recipes. Head to cookthestory.com/ROTD and you can subscribe there, or go get your phone and use your favorite podcast app and search for Recipe of the Day. You will find it there. And if you are on an app that lets you do ratings and reviews, please give me a rating and review. I'd love to hear what you think of the show. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Raquel from Organized Island. I love that spaghetti idea. Everybody make sure you are following Raquel on social media. Go check out her site. And now I'm going to go make those egg noodles. I am Christine Pittman from cookthestory.com, thecookful.com, the all new chicken cookbook, and from this podcast, Recipe of the Day. I hope you have a great weekend. Let's get cooking.